Today, we're going to dive into a story about control, about power, and really a revolutionary idea in the world of data. It all comes down to this: how do you secure your most sensitive information from the very people who hold all the keys? This is the story of Oracle Database Vault and its mission to, well, lock down the lockbox itself.
So let's start with this fundamental question. For decades, the person in charge of the database, they had ultimate power. But what if that power becomes a liability? What if the biggest risk to your data isn't some external hacker, but the trusted administrator inside the system? This was the fundamental flaw in the security model, a problem that really forced the entire industry to rethink who they could actually trust.
So here's where we're headed. We're going to start in what I like to call the DBA's kingdom, this realm of unchecked power. Then, we'll see how a new digital vault was forged and take a peek inside its lockbox to see how it works. After that, we'll trace the vault's evolution over time, and finally, get into its complicated and pretty controversial legacy.
All right, first up, the DBA's kingdom. To really get why Database Vault was such a game changer, you have to understand the world it was born into. I mean, just think about it for a second. The DBA was the gatekeeper, the wizard behind the curtain. They had what was basically godlike access to every single piece of data. Now, this was necessary to manage things, patch, optimize, but it also meant they could, in theory, look at anything: payroll, customer info, trade secrets. It was a position of immense and, let's be honest, often totally unchecked trust. And then, boom, the world changed. A wave of new regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley for finance, HIPAA for healthcare, and PCI for credit cards created this new pressure cooker. Suddenly, having one person with the keys to the entire kingdom wasn't just a risk anymore. It was a massive compliance failure just waiting to happen.
This regulatory pressure, it forced a completely new way of thinking. And that brings us to the creation of a solution: forging a digital vault. This was Oracle's direct answer to that insider threat problem.
So what exactly was Oracle's big idea? They called it Oracle Database Vault, and its mission was simple, but absolutely revolutionary: to prevent any privileged user, and yeah, that includes the all-powerful DBA, from accessing sensitive data they had no business seeing.
This is the core concept, and it's a powerful one. It's not just about putting a lock on the data. It's about building a second, more secure lockbox around the first one, and then giving the key to someone other than the person who manages the building. It's a fundamental shift in the whole philosophy of trust. Okay, but how does it actually work? Let's go inside the lockbox and check out the tools that make this whole new level of control possible.
The first tool we've got is the realm. The best way to think of it is like a digital security fence. You literally draw this boundary around your most critical data, say your HR or finance tables, and the realm enforces one simple rule: no one gets in, not even a DBA with system-wide privileges, unless they're explicitly authorized for that specific realm. Okay, so beyond the fence, you've got command rules, and this is where the control gets incredibly granular. So a user tries to run a command. The rule engine kicks in and asks, okay, who is this person? What time is it? Where are they connecting from? And based on those answers, the command is either allowed to proceed or it's just shut down cold. So a DBA trying to run a select star on the payroll table at 9 p.m. from some random network? Denied. Simple as that.
And all this leads to the most profound change of all: the separation of duties. Before, the DBA did everything. With Database Vault, that role gets split in two. You now have a security administrator who controls the vault and sets the policies. The DBA, meanwhile, can still do their job, manage performance, availability, but they can no longer just bypass the security controls. No single person holds all the keys anymore.
But of course, this technology didn't just stand still. It had to adapt to a rapidly changing world, which brings us to its evolution.
So if you look back, it started in 2006, and the focus was really on those core features, realms, and command rules. As we move through later releases, you see it getting more deeply integrated and aware of modern stuff like multi-tenancy. And today, well, today it's a core, often automated part of Oracle's cloud infrastructure, helping companies meet compliance standards with pretty much the flip of a switch.
So, what was the real-world impact of all this? Well, that leads us to our final section: the pretty controversial legacy of a tool that basically pitted security against traditional control. Look, the reality is Database Vault worked. It really did. It gave enterprises a powerful tool to deal with the insider threat and meet those strict regulations. But it came at a cost. A lot of DBAs, who for years prided themselves on having total control, they saw it as a tool of mistrust, like a set of digital handcuffs.
It wasn't just a technical change, it was a huge cultural clash. You know, this whole thing really comes down to that famous security principle, trust but verify. It was Oracle's way of saying that in an era of high stakes and strict compliance, simple trust just isn't enough anymore. By locking down even its own administrators, Database Vault redefined security and forced this massive conversation about power and control. And it makes you wonder, in a world where data is everything, can we ever truly trust anyone without a system there to verify?